Okay, we're rolling.
Okay, this is a interview at the New York State Military Museum, Saratoga Springs, New York. It is the 6th of February, 2008, approximately 10:30 a.m. Interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Kathlyn Rooney, October 5th, 1947, in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to entering service?
I had 2 years of college. I flunked out. It was the 60s. You know, there were more important things to do than study.
Okay. Why did you decide to enlist in the service?
Because I had 2 years of college. I was kind of aimless. I was in my early 20s. Life wasn't going anywhere. I wanted to finish school. I couldn't afford it. And I thought that was a good way to finish my education.
Mm-hmm. You went with the Army. Why did you select the Army?
Basically, I was thinking of the Air Force, but the day I decided to do it, the Air Force guy was on leave, and the Army recruiter caught me.
Okay. When did you go into the service?
August 1972.
Okay. Where were you inducted?
I was living in Rome, New York. I was inducted in Syracuse.
And where did you go for basic training?
Fort McClellan, that's where all the women went back then.
Okay. So you were in the Army when women were still
Wax.
wax.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like?
What was it like? I just found I was never a very physically active person. I mean, I rode my bike a lot, but I found doing all the exercises was really difficult. Running 2 miles was really difficult. And also just following orders. For me, one of the tough things was I grew up in an Air Force town. I had a lot of friends who were officers. Mm-hmm. My uncle was an officer. I mean, I knew officers as Bob and Tom and Harry, and all of a sudden they were these other people that I had to salute and say yes sir, no sir to. That was really difficult. I grew up very egalitarian, mm-hmm. and just the structure was one of the most difficult things for me. Mm-hmm.
Okay, how long was your training at Fort McClellan?
I think it was 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm. What, besides those things, do you have any other recollections of your training there?
The confidence exercise. I mean, they call it a confidence exercise. We call it torture. You know, where you had to put the gas mask on, mm-hmm. and they told you it was just so you would have confidence that your equipment worked. I remember that as being extremely uncomfortable and also kind of an adventure. You know, it was like, wow, I'm really in the Army. You know, I'm using these things.
Mm-hmm. Were you trained with firearms?
No, back then women weren't.
Mm-hmm. Okay, after McClellan, where did you go?
Fort Gordon, I was a teletype operator.
How long was that school?
Gee, I don't know, because I was on hold a couple of times. They had to wait for my TS clearance to come through, and mm-hmm. several of us, it didn't come through in time, so we had to be on hold for a while. Then I had some surgery, and so I was out for another 4 weeks. I think it was a total of 8 or 10 weeks. I can't remember.
Was that a lot different than basic training?
It was a lot different. You were in a room with, at the most, 6 or 7 other women. When you weren't in class, you had a lot of freedom. Mm-hmm. You know, you could get away on the weekend, you could get away in the evening. There were men there.
Uh-huh.
Okay, where did you go from there?
Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Okay, reading your account here, you had quite an introduction to Bragg. What was that?
I was in the first group of women who were attached to a Special Forces unit, and it was quite the experience. Some of the men thought, oh, it was wonderful. We have somebody in skirts, you know, to sit at the front desk, and some of them really resented the fact that women, you know, were invading their territory.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you have the option to go to jump school?
They asked me to go to jump school, and I told them, you know, airplanes are for getting to point A to point B. I'm not getting out in the middle, thank you very much. So I didn't go to jump school.
Okay.
Now, you mentioned that when you went to Fayetteville, North Carolina, there was a sign on the front of
the sign on the front. Oh, yeah, my first introduction to Fayetteville, you got to realize here's this nice little Yankee girl from upstate New York, and I got off this was 1973. I got off the plane in Fayetteville and took a cab to Fort Bragg, and a farmer had a sign in his field that said, "The Ku Klux Klan welcomes you to Fayetteville." I mean, my first reaction was, let's just turn this cab around, get back on the plane, and get out of this awful place. So. I didn't have that option. It just was a culture shock
Yeah.
for me, you know? It was one of those things I had read about, but it was never in my face that much. It was a real shock.
Now, there were black women in your unit?
There were black women in my unit.
How did they react to these things? do
You know, I
know,
never
or-
really talked to them about it that much. I think because the base made a real, Fort Bragg at least made a real effort to get this guy to take his sign down, and the city of Fayetteville made a real effort for this guy to take his sign down. On base, it was fine. I had a friend who was black. We went off base, and I never sensed anything bad happening when I was off base with her. But that's just my perspective. I don't know what her perspective was.
Okay. How long were you at Bragg?
I was at Bragg from from April of 73 to November of 74.
And what did you do at Bragg?
They made me be a secretary because at the time women weren't deployable, and my specialty for Special Forces was a deployable thing. I was the teletype operator, so they made me be a secretary. At first when I got there, women weren't deployable, but the men very justifiably were upset that women weren't being called up at 4 in the morning when they had the alerts. And so it was in October of 73, beginning of October, they said, next time we have an alert, all you women are going to come to. And the 3 of us said, okay, fine. You know, we're part of the unit, of course, we expect it. So about 3 weeks later, they came over the PA system in the barracks that 5th and 7th groups are on alert. So the 3 of us got our fatigues on and went marching down the street, you know, thinking, oh wow, we're really, really part of the group now. And we got there and it was a real thing. It was the 74 Yom Kippur War.
Oh, yeah.
And we were on real alert for 2 weeks, and it was kind of scary.
No, you were with the 5th?
I was with the 5th.
Now, if they had been sent over, would they have sent you guys?
Yeah,
too?
they would have sent us guys too, but we would have stayed back and done support.
Mhm.
We wouldn't have worked in our field. We were all single corps, and none of us would have worked in our field. We would have, stayed in the back and typed things or something.
Mhm.
Okay, after Fort Bragg, where did you go?
Oh, the best 2.5 years of my life. I went to NATO SHAEF headquarters outside of Brussels, Belgium. SHAEF is Supreme Headquarters, Allied Powers Europe. It's the military end of NATO. And I worked in the communication center at SHAEF. It was absolutely phenomenal.
In what ways?
Just being in Europe and being at a place that wasn't, and this sounds bad, but it wasn't so like strict military. It was an international force, which I loved. My boss for a while was a German chief petty officer and a British guy who was Air Force NCO. So to me, it was really nice living in an international atmosphere. And I spoke enough French to get by, not fluently at first, but enough to get by. So I could just hop in my car and go anywhere and be able to get around. I just love being in Europe.
Now, did you go to work in uniform each day?
Yeah, I had to go work in uniform. We went to work in uniform.
Now, where did you live? On a base?
We
or?
lived at SHAEF. There was a women's barracks there. I lived there.
How many women were assigned?
Oh, I don't know. It was 30 years ago.
Approximately.
Approximately several hundred, maybe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now, they were mixed nationalities?
Mostly, our
too,
barracks
or-
was all. The British had their own barracks,
Oh, okay.
and the other international women were there too, and the Americans had their own. But I worked with a lot of British women.
Did you get to travel around Europe?
Oh yeah. I mean, on my day off, I would just drive my car to the outskirts of Paris and park there and take the metro in and spend the day in Paris and then drive back at night. And our office, every so often, would have trips to places like Canterbury or Cologne or Paris or things like that. My mom, being a good mother, of course had to make sure her daughter was okay in Europe. So she forced herself to come to Europe for 2 weeks. And she had wanted to go to Hungary because that's where her parents were from. But at the time, it was the height of the Cold War, and I wasn't allowed to go there because, of the position I had. So we went to England instead for a week and a half, and it was wonderful.
Now, did you have a high security clearance? for
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, and that's why I couldn't go to Hungary.
Now, were you still doing like teletype?
I was a teletype operator, yeah.
Mhm.
What were some of the things you did as a teletype? I know, it's a stupid question, but what were some of your
You sent and
responsibilities?
received messages over these teletype machines. We called it poking. It was typing up the little long things. You received messages through pneumatic tubes from all over the building, and sent them up to where they were supposed to go.
Now, were they in a code? Encoded?
No, most of them, the encoded ones went to another spot,
Mhm.
and I had nothing to do with that. Some of them, though, were in French, and some were in Turkish.
Now, you said one of the funniest things that
Okay.
happened with the new.
With the pneumatic tubes, we were having like the blues and the oranges, in one of the exercises, and it was like the end of a really long, intense exercise, and people were kind of acting weird, but we said, oh, please keep the orange forces where they are, and the guys upstairs put a whole bunch of orange peels in the pneumatic tubes and sent them down to us with these big bombs, pictures of bombs going off. And it kind of relieved the tension and kind of made everybody relax a little bit.
Were there any other things that you recall that maybe you want to mention?
Just really the travel. I mean, just for me to be in the middle of Europe. The other funny thing, I don't know if I wrote that on there or not. I was dating a man who was American, but he was born in Germany. So his first language was German, even though he was in the American Army. We worked with a lot of Germans, and they all, of course, spoke German to each other in front of us, even about us. And Peter was very good. For the first 6 months, he never let on he spoke German. Never let on he spoke German. So they would talk German in front of him, even about him. And he would just kind of let it all pass like he was this dumb American who didn't speak any other languages. And one day they started saying some really nasty things about one of his friends. He took his clipboard and slammed it down and started to tell them off in fluent German. He said their jaws just dropped. Just dropped. And they said to him, wow, you speak German like a native. We didn't realize that. And he said, of course I do. I am a native. I'm a naturalized American. You mean I never told you? And after that, they were very careful about what they said.
I guess, how long were you in Europe?
I was at
Oh, you said,
27 months.
yes.
Now, towards the end of your service, did you get word that there was going to be a change where the women would be integrated into the regular army?
That's when I was in at SHAEF it happened. And it didn't really affect us that much, except we got a different command, or we came under a different command. We couldn't get weapons qualified or anything because there were no facilities to do that at SHAEF. In fact, we didn't have PT, we didn't have formations. We just went to work. We were expected to do all our PT and stuff on our own, just because I guess there was a rule saying that you couldn't show your strength over other countries. We were all in this together, and so they didn't have formations. You didn't run in formation. You didn't do your PT together. You just kind of went to work. Loved it.
When you, now, you said your mom came over?
My mom came over, yeah, because, like I said, it was her duty, she said, to make sure her daughter was okay in Europe.
Where did she stay?
Well, she stayed at a motel across the street from the base for one night, and then we went to England for a week and a half.
When you returned to the States, what did you do?
I went to Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indiana, and I just worked in the communications center there.
That must have been quite a letdown from...
It was quite a letdown. I mean, I wasn't in Europe anymore. Indiana. But it was nice. I really liked Fort Benjamin Harrison. I wanted a small, kind of non-combat post near a large northern city. And that's pretty much what I got.
Now, during this time you were in the service, Vietnam was going on.
Vietnam was going on, just the tail end of Vietnam.
Was there ever any chance that you would be sent over there, or?
There could have been, probably more to Thailand than to Vietnam to do support, but not realistically. I mean, it could have happened.
Now, were you at Harrison until the end of your time in
I was
service?
in Harrison to the end of my time, yeah.
Did you ever think about staying in longer?
You know, one of my real regrets is that I didn't join the Guard when I got out. You know, but, 30 years, 25 years perspective, you have a whole new light on things. But yeah, that was one of my regrets is I didn't join the Guard when I got out.
Now, you said you dropped out of college. Did you continue your college education?
I continued when I was in the service. I went wherever I was stationed. I took some courses and when I was at Fayetteville State University, and at the University of Maryland, which had extensions overseas. Then when I got out, I finished up at SUNY in Utica.
Okay. So you used kind of like a GI Bill?
I used a GI Bill,
take
yeah.
care of
It was one of the reasons I joined, and it was more than worth it.
Did you use it for anything else? Were you allowed to use it for anything else, the GI Bill?
No, I mean, I went to grad school, but it was so much later that I had used it all up, first of all, and also it had expired.
Did you stay in contact ever with anyone that was in service with you?
Just one man I was really serious about. I met, and the guy was spoke German. We went together for about 6 or 7 years, and then it just didn't work out.
Okay.
But other than him, no one.
How do you think your time in the service had an effect on your life?
I think it made me more disciplined, more aware of the world around me, more appreciative of people who were in the military. And it just really broadened my whole perspective on life. I met people I never would have met otherwise, especially when I was in Europe.
Do you think you would ever had an opportunity to travel like that?
Not like I did, no. And I love to travel, and so that was probably one of the highlights. I'm not sure if I said it in the interview or to you before, but the best 2.5 years of my life were the 2.5 years I spent in Europe.
Are there any other things you remember that you wanted to add? Or?
Oh, yeah, when I was at Fort Gordon, I was in holdover for a while. And they made us do all kinds of tasks. And it was just at the time the POWs were coming home from Vietnam. And one of the places they were processed was at Fort Gordon. And they needed they wanted women to do this, a couple of women, 2 or 3 of us, to take care of the children when the men and their spouses and their wives were being processed. And so another woman and I took care of all the POW kids for, about 2 or 3 weeks when the men were being processed. It was absolutely fun. You know, we wore just regular clothes. They gave us a driver, they gave us a pack of kids, and they said just entertain them. And so we did. It was a lot of fun.
Now, did you meet any of the POWs?
Oh yeah, I met a couple of them.
Were they pretty well emaciated? I mean, could you tell that they had been in captivity?
One of them had just been there a really short time, so he wasn't. And the other one, he looked thin, but he didn't look emaciated.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your interview.
You're quite welcome. It was fun.
Yeah.